storm is here. There's not much more to say. As you listen to the stories of the people that were so deeply impacted by the tornadoes in our area, I want you to remember, think about what it must have been like in Holy Week and how Holy Week must have felt like a storm, shared the same chaos and disaster that these people had to face as well.
I'll share the story of what the day of the tornado was for us. It was a normal, nice Memorial Day weekend. We had just celebrated Corey and Callie Adcock's birthday. It was a great birthday party. So we got to bed a little bit later than normal, and then a couple hours later, we knew there might be storms in the forecast, and sure enough, we heard the sirens and the phone alerts, and took the kids down to the middle of our house right over here. As the event was happening, right about where I'm sitting now, we heard a loud thud, and then before we knew it, this ceiling was collapsing and our house was inundated with water. So thinking back now, just at the time you don't exactly know what's happening and you're just reacting. But I remember sitting there and having a vulnerable feeling, but also just trying to get a lot of water out of the house or out of different rooms, right? It's all a blur from there. I think we had firefighters here, we had gas being turned off, we moved our kids and people down the street to my parents' apartment, which we were lucky to have that. And then for me, I don't think I slept but maybe a half hour that night. But yeah, it was really, this is really the first time I'm recounting kind of moment by moment how everything happened, but adrenaline just kind of kicked in for me at least, with just like a feeling of vulnerability, but also at the end of the next morning, just being very grateful that everyone was okay. But then that's kind of the start of the whole process, I think, of the recovery that it sinks in over time.
We had 3 trees fall that damaged property. The largest fell here, but it also damaged really the back half of the house. So in the bedrooms upstairs on this half of the house, walls were taken out, a bathroom had to be taken out. And so as we went back to replace everything, we wound up doing it all, which I think is really easy, or maybe not easy, but I think that was part of what was really difficult for me in particular, is that when you hear about a renovation, you always imagine it being a really exciting and happy time because you're taking something and you're making it what you want. But when something was already what you wanted, it comes with more loss than it comes with the sense of gain.
It was a Sunday morning. It was May 26th. Oddly enough, the week after Pentecost, which I didn't really totally sink in until we actually got the sanctuary ready for Christmas Eve. But arrived at the church, obvious damage all over the place, trees down, everything else, had to reroute like 5 times come in here. But the interesting experience was pulling up and initially thinking that everything was okay in regards to the sanctuary. And as I was doing a walk around the front corner here at 3rd Street and Elm, we had this really nice sign that was in masonry, and the sign itself was totally blown apart. So all these massive stones, we're talking, they're heavy. It's a solid workout to try and pick one of them up. This archway of stone that was holding a metal sign in place had totally blown apart. I looked at the church steps, and the south-facing doors were fine. They were locked. Nothing was wrong with them. But our east-facing doors, when I got to those steps, I noticed that there was this big cross that normally sits on our usher stand in our narthex, and it was sitting outside, which I knew it shouldn't be outside. So I walked up closer to the door and realized that it had been pulled open. What we think happened that caused the damage in here to the sanctuary was that the tornado passed overhead, headed east, and it sucked the doors facing east open, tore the doors open even though they were locked shut and everything was locked down. And a pressure wave moved through the whole building that shut fire doors, all that kind of stuff upstairs. The roof of the sanctuary on that corner, the opposite corner, pressure brakes blew off, and then this stained glass window actually got sucked into the room. It was like somebody had put a string right to the center of it and yanked it to the point that it came out like 12 inches or so, a foot. And the woodwork's actually still out of plane right now. That's what all that bracing's for. But that was kind of the day of. Everything else was a barrage of, we locked down the building as best as we could to make sure that everything was secure. There was no power or anything like that. There wasn't power around most of the town. Some church members helped secure the doors that had been blown open because they were ripped open so violently that there was no way to actually get them to stay shut. We had to board the doors shut in order to keep everything safe inside.
The day of the tornado, we actually had a very nice day out on the lake with my sister and brother-in-law. Went home, was not even expecting much bad weather, had gone to bed. About 1:30, my sister called and told us that there was tornadoes coming our way and we should get to the basement. We also had an Airbnb in the basement, and I had 4 people downstairs in the basement at the Airbnb, so we didn't really want to barge in on them in the middle of the night. So we just stayed in our bedroom and turned on the TV, watched the weather. We could see that it really was coming pretty much straight for us. The power went out about that time, so we left the bedroom and went out to the other part of our house, and that's about when all the hail, which was probably golf ball size if not bigger.
Yeah, it was coming horizontally.
It was coming horizontally, and the rain, and it was just pounding on our windows. So we walked away from those, and we're standing pretty much at the top of the stairs that go down to the basement. And Brad was watching the weather on his phone, and we could see it pretty much was coming.
It just got louder and louder and louder.
And then we didn't really know what had happened, but it's hard to even describe. It was crashing, breaking of wood, breaking of glass, the house shuttered. We didn't know what had happened, but almost immediately it was outside air and insulation blowing around our feet. And rain. So we knew something bad had happened, and at that point we went downstairs.
Flew downstairs.
Yeah, we flew downstairs at that point. The guests were already up, and she was trying to text me to tell me to come downstairs, but her text wouldn't go through. And then we just waited for the storm to pass. I think Brad went upstairs first.
We waited about 10 minutes, and then I'm like, surely it's gone by now. And I went upstairs with one of our guests and looked down the hallway with my flashlight, and I could see a tree hanging in our bedroom. And then I looked in our daughter's room, and there was a tree hanging in her room. So I knew it was bad.
He came back downstairs and told me our bedroom's gone.
Yeah.
And
It was gone.
I was like, what does that mean? So we tried to go outside and look around, but it was so dark. All we could really see was just trees down everywhere. We couldn't really see.
We couldn't get out the front door without ducking under the tree that had fallen from the back of the house all the way to the front of the house. And there was water gushing into the basement, and we thought it was from the rain because of the storm. And a couple hours later, they came up. We were upstairs. They were downstairs. I was filing our insurance claim. And they came upstairs and said, there's still water coming in here. And I'm like, well, it's not raining anymore. So we knew pipes were broken. So I had to go outside and shut off the water to the house. I had to climb over trees, under trees, and over trees to get to the shutoff valve out by the street. I got the water shut off, and then we just started a fireman brigade getting everything out of that part of the basement. And the water had also flooded up upstairs. All of our hardwood floors were ruined. Everything downstairs was ruined. Water was pouring like rain into our downstairs basement, into our downstairs bedroom. We got that stopped. And then we just waited I finished the insurance claim, and then we just waited for the sun to come up so we could see what the damage was.
Yeah, when the sun came up, and then we could really see how bad everything really was.
So we have a basement in our house, and we do have a room that we've hardly ever had to use, but we do use in the event of a tornado right under the stairs. And So Barry had come to tell me that they were headed right for us, literally right for our house, and we needed to get downstairs. And so I quickly got a phone call off to my sister and brother-in-law who lived not far from us, and to my mom, telling them that they needed to take shelter immediately as well. And then grabbed our dogs and went downstairs, underneath the stairs, I should say, downstairs. And we watched, the storm roll in on TV for as long as we could, and then the lights flickered, and then the power went out, and then it just got really loud. I mean, we even in our basement, it sounded like we had just a tin roof above us, and hail that rained down for what seemed like forever. And you really couldn't hear anything else at that point in time. So that was pretty scary. And then that part passed, and I called my sister back from the basement room, and she said that they'd been hit. And that was pretty scary.
Yeah, that's when things got really scary. I got a call from our public safety administrator, and he said, Benton County's getting hit. Here's a phone number in Little Rock you need to call right now and declare a state of emergency. And that was at about, I want to say about 1:30 or so in the morning. So it's pitch black, really noisy. Again, for us, it was like just a loud roaring, kind of roaring noise, but it was hail more than the wind. However, the wind was really, really strong at our house too, and that was when I was taking that call and understanding just how severe this was becoming. That's when Cindy was on the phone with her sister, and so I had to go. I had to come downtown here to our emergency operations center. But what was really interesting was I was coming up our stairway out of the basement, knowing it was pitch black, and I had a flashlight, and knowing that our Cindy's sister's house had gotten hit. We didn't know how severe at that point. We just knew it was severe. I was coming up the stairs of our basement to the floor of our house, and I wasn't sure what I was going to see. And that was really scary. And, Cindy and the dogs are downstairs, and I'm coming up, and very eerie, because by then it had quieted down. The storm had passed. With my flashlight, I kind of looked around, and we seemed to be okay. And I pointed my flashlight out of our windows that look out at our backyard, and it looked like a war zone back there. And I just thought, well, that's not good. That's not good at all. Got in my vehicle, and as I was coming out of our neighborhood in Bentonville, I just saw trees everywhere. I mean, it was unbelievable. But I had to get downtown. That's my job. And there's a couple different ways down our neighborhood, and the first two ways I went, trees were across the road, and I couldn't get out, and there were some people starting to come out of their houses, and we were all yelling at each other, "You okay? You okay? You okay?" And then down one way, there was a bit of a path across some people's front yards, and so I drove across the front yards and came down onto Walton and made my way downtown here to our emergency operations center that's in the basement of this building. When I got down here, my public safety people were here, my emergency manager was here, the sheriff was here, our regional manager of our ambulance system was here. We were right outside in our emergency operations conference room, right outside of our dispatch center. And to say that they were busy in there would be a complete understatement. We'd called in additional dispatchers, and we have big TVs on the wall down there that have icons that show where all the calls are coming in and what kind of calls: a fire call, ambulance call, law call. And the screen was so lit up with icons that you couldn't even see the map of Benton County. And the sheriff turned to me and he said, "I've never seen anything like this." And I said I hadn't either. And that's when I think it kind of dawned on both of us that we had really been hit hard. And at that particular moment, we didn't know how hard, but we start figuring out, how do we deploy resources? It's a life safety event at that point in time. We knew that there was going to have to be casualties. And so we were worried about where the sheriff's deputies were deployed, or the road department, or ambulance. I was talking to mayors. We were in constant coordination with the Arkansas Department of Emergency Management. It was chaotic, but it was kind of controlled chaos. Everybody knew their job and they were doing their job, but it was really scary until the dawn. And at one point I got up and drove back out to go to my brother-in-law and sister-in-law's house, Cindy's sister's house. was going down J Street towards 10th and couldn't even turn down 10th Street. It was just covered with trees. But what was really heartening is there were already people out there helping out, and the sun wasn't even up yet. So that was heartening. But we knew by about 3 or 4 that morning that we had had a terrible event in Benton County.
Shelley's said about all that's right about that. I don't know what we can do to make it better, but we have to do something. The disasters are beginning to be numerous now, and it's just more than we can stand.
Yeah. Well, I would say in a disaster situation like that, you realize the immensity of God and the power of nature, and that there are a lot of forces in the world that you can't control. And it makes you realize how small you really are. And so turning to faith gives you something to hold on to throughout that, and to know that this too shall pass and there'll be a brighter day in the future. And with the support of your church family and others, you can get through it together.
I think you said it really beautifully. Like, there is a fragility to our lives and what this experience is, and there's a deep beauty in being there and experiencing the moment. There's also a really deep well of sadness that can be there. And I think what I've learned is all of those emotions are valid. Those experiences are real. And what that means for a faith perspective is that in each of those emotions and each of those experiences, God is also there in that moment. And it takes a lot to look for God in moments of challenge and heartache, but I think those are the moments when it's most important to continue to seek Him out.
The storm is here, but it's not the end of the story. Easter is coming. We may have the cross to face, but we also have the empty tomb. And the empty tomb will heal us all. The empty tomb will fully mitigate the disaster. Thanks be to God. Amen.